Well, hello, I'm Jayney Goddard. I'm president of the Complementary Medical Association, and I've been a committed vegan since, probably about 2010, so some years now, and I have to say it's the best decision I ever made. Prior to that, I really didn't know very much about plant-based eating at all. I'd experienced a period of very severe, very life-threateningly severe illness, and it's interesting because I work in this field and I thought I was doing absolutely everything right, and then finally some friends nagged me and said, you've got to go plant-based. And actually they suggested I went raw food, plant-based. So for me it was a baptism of fire because I went from eating conventionally, but from what I thought was, I thought I was eating healthily, but it was nevertheless, conventional, to being a raw vegan pretty much overnight, and it was a shock to the system, but my goodness, it did the trick. It really did. It was one of those things that you just, the shutters fall and you just go, wow, how did I not know this? And it's the best thing I ever did.
So what I'm hearing you say is you had some health things going on, and friends basically nagged you into doing this.
Yes, that's right. They absolutely did. It was 5 separate friends, none of whom knew each other. This is the funny thing. And they were all saying, you must go raw vegan. This will sort you out. What I actually had was very severe rheumatoid arthritis, which had left me wheelchair bound, completely dependent upon others for over 10 years. And at my very worst, I was in hospice care. Fully expected not to make it. So I really had been very severely ill. And it's interesting, my rheumatologists and others said, well, you're never going to walk again. You'll never be able to stand. As a consequence, I for some reason, I still couldn't really buy into that. It didn't feel like it was part of any kind of reality for me. So when my friends eventually nagged me and said, look, you just need to do this. And then they explained why, because I'm a great one for needing the data. So as soon as they explained why, I thought, okay, it kind of makes sense. So I have to confess, I went plant-based first. And it wasn't until I actually went to a retreat and did this raw vegan program that I actually was exposed to videos about animal welfare and so on, and to my absolute horror, and I don't know how I didn't know. This is the strange thing, I don't know how I didn't know, and I think I was just kind of residing, as most people do, in that kind of deniability, plausible deniability, which is, oh, well, I didn't know that was happening. But had I thought about it, animal farming and so on, I'm sure I probably could have worked it out, but I didn't, and I know it's the same for so many people. My only regret is not understanding this sooner. Had I understood it sooner, I think I'd have certainly been, jumping on board with becoming not just plant-based, but actually becoming a compassionate, ethical vegan.
Wow. Now, how in the world did you have so many vegan friends nagging you to do this when you weren't even vegan to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting question. So I'm working in my role, as I say, is I'm president of the Complementary Medical Association. So in that role, it's an organization. It's a global non-profit that I founded 30 years ago. It's our 30th anniversary this year. So I knew so many practitioners of different disciplines and doctors and various other people. So this is why I know so many people in the sector, in the health and well-being sector. So as I say, though, I started off life as a ballet dancer, and so I had been kind of trained essentially into believing that you need animal protein because you need your strength. You've got to have a low-calorie, high-protein diet. At that point, we were told that oily fish is anti-inflammatory. So that myth is still doing the rounds. So this is the thing. Back in the 90s, we really didn't know just how harmful these things were. So I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I was eating a healthy diet because I was eating, oily fish, salad, maybe a glass of red wine, all of that misinformation that we can now look back at and think, well, actually, my goodness, that was actually driving the inflammation. It was driving the condition massively. And also, of course, what we know about in autoimmunity, molecular mimicry, whereby, of course, the body is looking at these molecules coming into your system, getting through that leaky gut, getting through that permeable gut, getting into your system, and then, of course, causing massive upregulation in immune response. And then, of course, the body turning on itself and scavenging anything else it recognizes as being an animal protein. So, we've got so much more knowledge, but it's a great question. How did I know all these people? Yeah, mainly through work. It was, yeah, absolutely.
Wow. And you're still doing that same work?
Yes, I'm still running the Complementary Medical Association, but I'm also a writer, an author, journalist, broadcaster, and teacher. I teach a lot of different courses, and I still do have I still have a patient base globally now, because if anything positive came out of COVID, it was the fact that we had to get onto Zoom, and we had to sort of cast our net wider and start making videos and start teaching and doing all of these wonderful things. And of course, that gets you a global audience. So I've been really shocked, actually, at the NHA conference. People coming up to me saying, hey, you're Jayney Goddard, I watch your videos. And, one puts this information out there and you have no idea about the actual real impact this information has. And it does land and it does help people. And it's been an amazing experience to actually be here at the conference.
Yeah, I've noticed that too before. It's easy to put yourself out there and try to influence others and feel like nobody's getting it. Yeah. I used to actually, occasionally post stuff on Facebook and think, yes, nobody's getting this, nobody's responding. And then one day a friend told me, man, I've been looking at your posts and it's kind of influenced my direction of eating. And then and the whole time I'm thinking, well, why didn't you comment on it? Why didn't you like it or say something? But it just goes to show that if that's happening, surely there's others, and it's easy, yes, to get down about that, like, yes, you're not being effective when, yes, you probably are.
Yeah. It is extraordinary, and I just think that social media, with the way that the algorithms are so tricky and just keep getting changed, I think it doesn't really give you much of a real, an in-depth understanding of the impact that you're able to make. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear, your experience with that, because that really reflects and resonates with mine.
You mentioned the conference, so might as well go ahead and say where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here I am, all the way over the pond from Blighty, from England. And so we're in Cleveland, Ohio, and we are at the National Health Association conference, their 75th anniversary conference. So it's been really special. I mean, it's been such a treat for me to be here. I've been to them before, but this one has been absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Wow. So what are some of the things that make this really special? Why might somebody want to consider coming to this event?
Right, okay. Well, the thing about the NHA conferences is that they have this knack, well, not quite a knack, because that implies there's luck more than judgment, but actually what it is they are able to select the most amazing speakers, the most amazing presenters. And so I've just been blown away by the quality of the speakers. We've got everybody from T. Colin Campbell. Now, I have to say I've been fangirling so badly over T. Colin Campbell. It's been embarrassing, quite frankly. But he was cool about it. He was lovely. He's such a gentleman and such a wonderful man. But for anybody who's read The China Study or Whole or any of Colin's other books, they'll know the quality of that man's research. He is a brilliant scientist. And of course, obviously, we've got Alan Goldhammer, we've got Dr. Stefan Esser, we've got Dr. Frank Sabatino, who's my partner. I've come up here from Florida, where Frank lives. Frank's been running a retreat down there. I've been helping out on that. And then, it was lovely for us both to travel up here to Cleveland to be able to attend this. And it's been so nice as well, just meeting people who live this kind of lifestyle, hearing some of the success stories. Obviously my success story is mine, and you sort of tend to think that, I'm kind of a one-off, but having said that, of course, that isn't, it's obviously not the case, because I've got patients that I look after, and I do see amazing responses, but also talking to other people here who have had extraordinarily severe pathologies resolve, and it's remarkable. It's just absolutely superb to see these things that people are able to treat, especially when, like me, they've just been kind of brushed away by conventional medicine and just told, well, there's nothing more we can do for you, or well, yes, I mean, you're not going to fix this unless you have really extensive, massively invasive surgery where we remove half your organs and things like that, so listening to those sorts of stories is a great confirmation that in real life that this stuff works. So on one hand, you're listening to the theoretical stuff that the scientists are speaking about, but also you're speaking to actual real people who've just had the most extraordinary life change, with these approaches.
Yeah, wow, great pitch. And then Frank's retreat. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, Dr. Frank Sabatino has a fantastic retreat down in Florida. He does various things with different types of people on the retreat. So he has medically supervised water-only fasting that he offers. He also offers juicing programs and also food programs. Of course, obviously, whole food plant-based, or as Frank always says, whole food plant exclusive, because it excludes everything else apart from plants. Obviously, there's a clue in the name. He gets fantastic results. The retreat is actually called Balance for Life, and it's right on the beach at a lovely hotel in Deerfield Beach, as I say, right opposite the ocean. It's gorgeous, and it's been magical, actually. We've been able to walk up and down the ocean walk on a daily basis and jump in the ocean afterwards. So for me, coming from England, that's a rare treat. You don't always have that. Having said that, in England, we've got a massive heat wave that's been going on right now, but normally you don't have the luxury of being able to do that, and certainly not the beautiful, clear, gorgeous waters that they have down in Florida. So that's been wonderful, and we've been gorging on mangoes and pineapples and all the wonderful things that nature's bounty has to offer. So it's been a fabulous break to be able to come over, and I'm going back to England next Thursday. Very, very sadly, I shall be dragging my feet to the airport, but I've got to go back, got to get on with work, duty calls. So yes.
Wow. Could you be with somebody who isn't vegan?
No, I couldn't be with somebody who isn't vegan. No. Could you?
No.
No, absolutely no. It's.
I mean,
no.
I say that even though some people have some really powerful stories where they love somebody so much they've endured to help them transitioning.
It's very, very difficult. I think it's so tricky because the problem is even just basic things like you'd go to the fridge and open the fridge and you've got animal carcass sitting
and the bacteria
there.
That comes from that all over everything.
Yeah, actually, yes. I think that non-vegans don't realise how traumatising it is for ethical vegans to be exposed to that. I know it sounds probably really precious, and I'm sure that any carnists who might be watching might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, she's isn't she ridiculous?" I'm sure people think that, but it is traumatising because what happens. I mean, if you've been I don't know whether to say fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to be exposed to films like Earthlings, for example, and Dominion. It stays with you. It really does. I mean, I myself, I have to be very careful about the social media that I consume because there are certain groups who do post really graphic animal abuse videos and so on. I can't cope with it, actually. And of course, if you're living with somebody who's buying into all of that and supporting that industry, you are so ethically unaligned. And I take your point, if you've got somebody who's at least interested in ethical veganism and they are willing to listen and they're willing to start to understand, what the issues actually are, then possibly there's a chance. But, you're blessed. If you find somebody who's on the same path as you, you're absolutely blessed. And it's just one of the most amazing things that can happen. It really can.
After you went vegan, how long did it take approximately before you started noticing symptom relief?
Well, okay. Now, that you're going to think this is absolutely crazy, okay? But I'll tell you anyway. So I went to a particular health centre and we did the raw vegan thing. I did a 3-week program with them. I went in a wheelchair, having been told I'd never walk again. I was in extreme pain. I was also getting migraines, however you pronounce them in America, I don't know. And they were like knocking my vision out for like half a day at a time. And it was really difficult because I couldn't work. You know, if I couldn't see a computer screen, I couldn't work. So I did their 3-week program. At the end of the 3 weeks, I was not just standing, I was walking. Not just walking, I was walking up and down the beach 3 miles a day, followed by back-to-back Pilates and yoga classes. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous. It sounds as though it's absolutely just not possible, but that is absolutely what happened.
3 weeks.
3 weeks. I mean,
what was the program?
It was actually at Hippocrates.
Oh, great. Yeah,
Yes.
I've been there. I've interviewed a couple of people there.
You have?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, and so I did their Life Change program. I did the very basic program. I didn't buy into all of the other services that they sell. I'd read up on Anne Wigmore and the incredible work that she did back in the day. So I just thought, well, these were the results she was getting, and that's what I'm going to do her program. So the raw, the wheatgrass, and this, that, and the other. The sprouts, many sprouts. And also, but the thing is, it's not just the diet, is it? It's a case of, they had these wonderful Qigong classes followed by meditation. So I'd be getting up really early to go to those. Initially, people were having to take me in the wheelchair. So it's the whole, people often say to me, speaking at a conference or what have you, a lot of people say to me, what's the one most important thing I need to do in order to get well? And I have to break it to them very gently and say, I'm sorry, but there is no one thing you can do. This is a gestalt, but it's a holistic thing. Health is completely holistic. So in order to be healthy, and as we know from natural hygiene, it's everything. It's everything from sleep to nutrition to socialization to psychological and emotional poise, managing your stress response through to socializing really with groups of people who have a similar aim to you. I mean, what we know, the research shows us that if we work with a group of friends towards a common goal, it can add up to 9 healthy years to our health span, certainly aside from extending our lifespan. So, what we know is that all of these approaches have to come together to really make a big difference to our biological age. Biological age was something I became really quite obsessed by when I was in the hospice. I had many friends coming in when I was there, and they were doing reflexology, and somebody else was doing this, and so, aromatherapy, and somebody else was doing Reiki, and, we were throwing everything we had at this. And a friend came and he said, I'm going to measure your biological age. I said, oh, right, what's that then? So he explained it, well, it's the age you are biologically, as far as your biological systems are concerned and so on, not the age you are chronologically, which of course is your actual physical, your age, the number of times you've been around the sun, the number of birthdays you've had. And I said, oh, okay, that's quite interesting. So he did this biological age test, and I think I was about 37 at the time. I measured 55 years old on this biological age test, which I, of course, because I had massive, outrageous runaway chronic inflammation. I mean, it was just, and I'd also gone down to about 80 pounds. I was just skeletal. I had a cachexia. I was eating and eating all this stuff that I thought was right, and I was just losing weight. And by, sort of a few months into this situation where the weight loss started, I had literally catabolized all of my muscle and I couldn't move. I was just locked into a fetal position and I was so seriously ill. So that was a bit of a wake-up call, obviously, that particular test. Obviously, I was biologically a lot older, and that was a big shocker. It really was. And then so what happened was that I eventually managed to get out of there bit by bit because of all of the things that we were doing. I'm sure that that was really part and parcel of it, the healing journey. I was then put into a different centre because that was the hospice. Then I was put into a so-called rehab centre. So it was rehabilitating people who'd had very severe motorbike accidents. So it was a lot about how do we get this person moving again. So that sort of rehab, not like drug and alcohol rehab, it's like physical rehab. I won't bore you with the stories about that because that was a crazy, crazy place. I mean, that was just, it was an adventure. It was a bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest because it really was. I mean, it was a very, very strange environment to find myself in. But a gift, though, because I've been able to see kind of like how life is as a patient when you're seriously ill. And strange things that happen, like very little regard for people's autonomy, very little regard for people's privacy. People just come into your room regardless, without knocking and things like that. So it's taught me a lot about the way that I see I was going to say housing. It is sort of housing. That is kind of the goal, or a unit for older people, like a geriatric unit, but based on natural hygiene principles, that sort of thing. So looking after older people, helping them to age and age well, because we can't stop the aging process, but we can massively slow it down, and we can certainly stop the development of chronic disease. We can also halt and reverse chronic disease as well. It's well known in the literature, so it's not make-believe. This stuff actually is real, and it does happen. And I'm a testament to that, and so are all these other people that I've spoken to here. But anyway, so going back to this, I became very entranced and very intrigued about how we can rewind our body clocks. I don't know quite how, but I came across an ad online for the A4M conference, the Anti-Aging Association of America, I believe it is. They had a conference in Monaco that September. It was around about March when I found this ad. I thought, right, that's my goal. I'm going to go to that conference in Monaco because I'm really interested in the subject matter, and they had some fantastic scientists and doctors speaking. So I did actually teach myself to learn to stand again. I taught myself to walk again. It was excruciatingly painful. All of your muscle tissue has completely disappeared. Actually standing when you've been completely bedbound for a long, long time, well over 10 years, wheelchair and bedbound, it takes some doing. It really does. It's people just think, it must be difficult to learn to walk again because balance and so on and so forth and flexibility and so on. But actually, it's the pain. Nobody understands, unless they've been through it, the pain levels that you have to deal with. It is worse than anything I ever had with rheumatoid arthritis, and that is really bad. So, but yeah, I was determined, so I did that. I went to the conference. It really sparked this entire journey on sort of helping people to understand what biological aging is, what can be done about it, what telomeres are and how we can lengthen telomeres. And the truth of the matter is the only way of lengthening telomeres so that we manage to stay as biologically young and resilient as we possibly can is this lifestyle. It's the food that we eat. It's the mindset and meditation and psychological poise that we manage to manifest in our lives. It is the things like the socialization, but of course it's also things like the resistance exercise, things like walking, all of these things. It's not rocket science. It doesn't cost a fortune. There have been companies that have been trying to produce telomerase type products that increase the upregulation of telomerase production in the human body. And it just doesn't really work. There's very little data, and it's never really been proven to actually manufacture an increased level of telomerase. And you also have to ask the question, is that safe? Because we know that telomerase will also drive cancer development because it stops those cells from being able to that's right, exactly, apoptosis, yeah. So, we are far better just trying to do things naturally rather than trying to put things artificially into the human body. And the problem also, of course, with the medical model is that they're not suggesting people make changes to their diet. They're not suggesting that people actually do anything else to help themselves. You know, it's a bit like, is there a magic bullet? If I take this tablet, perhaps that's going to work. Well, of course, the problem is it doesn't. You've got to put the effort in. There's no magic bullet. What I did was, I've written several books over the years. I've had a pretty good run with the books, and they've been quite successful. And the most recent one really shocked me. The most recent book is called Rewind Your Body Clock, and the subtitle is The Complete Natural Guide to a Happier, Healthier, Younger You. I was absolutely amazed. I knew when I was writing it, I enjoyed writing it, and I thought, I think people are going to like this, but you never know. You put stuff out there, as we said earlier, you never quite know how it's going to land. And that book came out, and it went into Amazon at #1 of all books on Amazon. And I was shocked. And it really underlined to me the fact that people are hungry for this information. They really are intrigued. The Daily Mail then went on to serialize the book twice, and it went into translation and audio version and so on and so forth. So it's been a real runaway success. I was very surprised because I didn't realize just how much people want this information. And I think that's fantastic. You know, it really, really is. And I'm so pleased. Yeah.
You know, this reminds me of, I interviewed a man who was in the Navy for over 20 years. He wasn't vegan the first 2 years, and then the rest of that time he was vegan in the Navy.
Wow.
And there was times where he got certain vegan foods put, in the cafeteria or whatever. If he got to lunch late, everybody ate it before he got there.
Isn't that always the way? Honestly, I've been to weddings, funerals, and they've always had, vegan stuff, and you get there late and it's like, well, where is it? It's funny, isn't it? People do like the food.
Yeah.
This is what people say to me. So what, there's a lot of infighting online, isn't there, as we know, about, sort of somebody posts a beautiful vegan post, and you get all the carnies saying, you can't tell me what to eat. Don't you dictate to me. Don't you throw your beliefs down my throat, and all of that sort of thing. It's really quite funny. There is this huge kind of anti-vegan sentiment, and I think it's because of cognitive dissonance, and people know that it's not right to kill, and they'd be really upset if they heard me say our animal brothers and sisters, but they are, let's face it. They have every much as right to be here as we do. So a lot of people say to me, so what do you say to people? How do you help people to understand veganism and
how do you
help
influence
people?
others?
Yeah, exactly. And generally speaking, it's through doing videos like this, and so thank you for the amazing work that you do. But it's also, I just kind of lure them to the green side by making delicious dinners, catering entire parties. And people have come to my parties and so on, and not realized that everything has been completely 100% plant-based. So I'll cook up a beautiful chili and a beautiful salad. Of course, they'll realise the salad is veggies. And then I'll have a beautiful cheese platter, because we're very lucky in the UK with our vegan cheeses. We have proper bries, proper camemberts, proper blue cheeses. And they are indistinguishable from the real thing, which is amazing, which is great, because
that's usually the hardest thing for people.
It's really hard, yeah. Not just the the casomorphines, the addiction side, but it is a taste profile that people, we love that umami taste, don't we? And we're very lucky because we've got these amazing cheesemakers who, blessed are the cheesemakers, but these amazing cheesemakers who they get the rind, they use the same bacteria as the conventional cheeses, and they'll just make them out of cashew or coconut or whatever. It's shocking how good these cheeses are. I've actually had French friends of mine who, of course, are the absolute cheese gurus of the world, and they've not been able to tell the difference.
Sometimes people are like, well, why are you trying to make something look like it came from an animal? And it's like, well, why are you trying to make something that came from an animal look like something that didn't come from an animal?
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. How does a hamburger look like a cow? It's not even called cowburger, it's called hamburger. It's so far removed, isn't it, from what it actually is.
It's the size of some fruit or whatever, you can fit in your hand,
Yeah. No, it's really interesting, isn't it? And it's a very interesting conversation, because the thing is that, we're not vegan because we don't like meat. or chicken or fish or whatever. And that hasn't played a part in the, I mean, I'm sure there are people who don't, who act, my grandmother didn't like eating meat or chicken or fish or anything really. She didn't really like food. But there are a few people who don't like the flavour.
Yeah,
but the majority of us are, well, nah, it's just unethical.
Yeah, but I mean, people will learn to like all kinds of things that are toxic or even nasty at first, like cigarettes.
Yes.
And I mean, anybody who's smoked before, that first drag is like, you're
Yes.
gagging and
Yes.
whatnot. Then you acclimate to it.
Yeah.
But if you've been conditioned as a child, do you really like it, or were you just conditioned?
That's right, yes, absolutely. And there's also an argument, isn't there, that our microbiota, our gut flora, are really so conditioned also to be able to digest animal proteins. And this is a big problem, I think, when people start, when they first go vegan, they'll talk about gastrointestinal distress and so on and so forth. Not everybody. It didn't happen to me. It hasn't happened to quite a few people I know. But some people do experience difficulty, especially when they start to incorporate more beans and things like that.
Because you got to systematically introduce that.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is that you do need to know. It's so much easier now for people to be able to make the switch because there are so many videos online. There's so much freely available education to understand how to do veganism properly. That was certainly much less when I transitioned. And and of course also we have these analog foods as well, which are available. Okay, arguably they're probably not that healthy. They're still more healthy than meat. We know that. But if it helps, to my mind, if it helps somebody just make the change gently and enables them to do it, so much better than continuing to murder animals. So I'm in favour of analog foods for a while. I'm also in favour of people getting off them as quickly as they can. But if it helps a person over a little hump, great, go for it. Also in the UK, we're very, very lucky because we have more vegans per capita, I believe, than any other country in the world. So it means that every supermarket has a massive vegan section now. Of course, all supermarkets will have the produce section, which is the vegan section, let's face it. But they have these, amazing sections now dedicated to analog foods and that sort of thing. And so it's incredibly easy in the UK to be vegan. In my little town that I've just moved away from, Hastings, there were more vegan restaurants than there were conventional. So I guess actually in that case the vegan restaurants would be the convention down there because there's more of them. And the other restaurants are mainly, because it's a seaside town, mainly fish and chip shops obviously weren't. But there are fish and chip shops, of course, being a national dish in the UK, especially in a seaside town, that actually have perfectly acceptable vegan fish. But it is interesting, and now I'm up in Berkshire because my mum's not been too well, so I've been looking after her there, and I've bought a really beautiful property, very ancient property that I'll be running small scale retreats at, to give really good, really in-depth individual attention to the guests. And we'll be doing food, we'll be doing juicing, and when Frank comes over, he'll be doing water fasting. I'm not qualified to do medically supervised water-only fasting. I've never had the time to be able to intern with any of the guys, or go to True North or anything like that, or intern with Frank. It's a lot of work, and it's not something I would particularly want to take on. It's just a huge thing and there's so much that you need to know. But my expertise does extend to juicing and obviously the food that we eat as well. So I'm quite excited about that. The property is incredibly ancient. It's over 600 years old, so it predates the Tudor era. It's actually a Plantagenet building. It's utterly beautiful. It's got that sort of fairy tale cottage kind of feel to it, and look and feel, and so I'm really excited about that. It's really funny because Frank and I travelled up to London to go and see a show. I thought, well, maybe I dragged him to the Royal Ballet or something like that, poor man. He's learned to love ballet because he has to. It's funny because we got off the train, out of the train station, and we were walking through the West End of London, and there was a vegan restaurant there, juice bar there. You couldn't move for these places. It is so accessible in the UK. So we're very, very, very lucky. We know that. So.
What do you think about, like, now the FDA just approved here lab-grown meat?
Oh, have they? Oh, I don't. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, again, coming back to the idea of, is this going to help people? Is it going to be just a substitute for meat and people are going to still be consuming the eggs and the dairy and so on because they haven't made the connection? Or is this a way of facilitating a change to eating a healthier vegan sort of diet? I hate to use the word vegan diet because we know that veganism isn't a diet, but a healthier plant-based diet, perhaps a more compassionate vegan diet. If it is, then that's fantastic. If it isn't, then it's probably not terribly good for people. And but then again, as I say, I think the research still stands that it's healthier than actual meat, and certainly healthier for the cow, the sheep, or the pig, or the chicken, or the fish, or whomever it is that people would be killing otherwise. I mean, we have to end factory farming. There are no ifs, buts, and maybes. It's not just the compassion for the animals that drives this. It's compassion for the planet. If we want to survive as species, we don't have any option. We have to end. There are so many people who are critics of veganism who say, oh yes, but you lot are growing all that soy, without realizing that soy is being grown and those rainforests are being destroyed to feed animals. And so many people just don't actually get that part of the picture.
Well, I went vegan in 2011. I don't even think I started eating soy until like a couple of years ago.
Really? Yeah, I know. You actually don't have to. I mean, I happen to really, really like tofu.
Yeah, I've learned to love it now.
Yeah.
And tempeh,
edamame. It is. It's great. Yeah, it is really good. And I know there are some people who have difficulty with soy, but there are so many other things they could be having anyway. Yeah, exactly. So it's such a rich diet. The other thing I've noticed is I'm a much, much, much better cook since transitioning and becoming vegan, because it's kind of piqued my creativity with food. So whereas previously I'd have been making sort of fish and a salad, that sort of thing. I mean, how boring. You don't know that, and again, the sort of salad dressings that conventionally on your dressing on your salad, I should say, is very sort of vinaigrette, great, Caesar, great. We've got so many other things in our repertoire.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably like a book out there just on vegan dressings.
There is actually, yeah, and I've got it. Yes.
I mean, because they're so simple to make. Well,
yes.
So many of them are.
Yeah.
And they're so good.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know. And the other thing I was going to say is that we should touch on, I think, is the way that your palate changes dramatically. It really does. Yeah, I think it's not just for taste, but I think it's also for texture as well in many ways. Because I mean, I'm sure you couldn't conceive of actually eating a piece of meat. Thought is actually quite sickening.
It'd be like eating a human or something.
Yeah, it's just gross. The whole thing is absolutely vile. And it's funny. But I tell you something though, when I first went, I mean properly, so I'd been plant-based for a little while, but went properly vegan, as I say, about 2010. I was in Florida. I was walking back from a hot yoga class, I might add. I was walking along, had my little yoga mat on my back, and I had my little leggings on, and I suddenly started really laughing to myself. Oh my God, I'm a vegan that does hot yoga. I mean, what a cliche, And I was really just laughing, thinking, I never saw that coming. I never expected that, And so, sort of my former rock and roll lifestyle, how the mighty have fallen. But actually, no, it's the best. As I said, it's the best decision I ever made, ever, ever, ever.
Yeah, so what kind of foods do you eat on an ideal day?
Okay. Well, I'm a full-time carer for my mum. So I have to get up super early, try and get myself sorted out with my little bit of meditation and stretching. I then walk mum's dog. She has a medical detection dog. She's type 1 diabetic and she's doing, brilliantly apart from this recent blip. So I walk the dog, and which is great. It's lovely. And then I will come back, make sure all the meds are done. I'll make sure that her injections are done, so she's on insulin, of course. And then I'll make her usually something that will stabilize her blood sugar. I'm very mindful because I'm having to cater for her. So I will usually make a really nice oatmeal with some fruit, and that will keep her blood sugar really quite nice and stable.
You ever use groat oats?
No, I've never tried that.
They might even be better because it's a whole food.
Yeah,
it's more of a whole food.
That's interesting. Is that wheat? Are groats?
Well, no, you could get groat oat, the whole, when you're using rolled oats or something, that's more processed than the groat oat.
Oh, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, thank you.
Probably has a lower glycemic index.
Right, okay, thank you. I wasn't aware of that. I've never even seen that for sale,
Yeah,
so I'll
you
check
can
it
get them
out.
organic easier too.
Frank and I have been using, and I'm going to try and source in England, are the sprouted oats. Mm-hmm. So we've been having those over here, and I think that she'll do, because the protein level's higher, so again, that'll crowd out the carbohydrates. So that's a brilliant suggestion, thank you. So that's that. I will then go into the office, and I'll always take a big salad in with me, and I'll make a separate pot of dressing. Frank has turned me on to these amazing dressings that he makes, which are things like honey mustard, so-called honey mustard, of course, not with honey, but with dates, a little bit of mustard powder, and then a little bit of a sort of cashew, and various other little bits and pieces that he puts in. He's the dressing king. Throughout the day, if I'm hungry, I will snack on fruit. A banana or an apple or whatever, just to keep the brain functioning and the blood sugar levels up, and then come back and get something going for mum. Usually it'll be steamed vegetables and perhaps a jacket potato, that sort of thing. Sometimes I'll do a lovely stir fry in inverted commas. Of course, we don't fry, but we saute. I'll season some broth and create a broth. Usually involves garlic, chili. Also, I'll put in a little bit of celery salt. But it's not salt, it's actually dehydrated celery that's very, very finely ground, because it contains sodium, so you get that flavour profile, but without really exceeding your sodium levels. And yeah, so it works. And also I'll put a dollop of peanut butter, crunchy peanut butter into that. So it creates a really nice sort of Southeast Asian kind of flavour profile. So those are the sorts of things we do. I will make paellas, depending on how much time I've got. Usually after work I'm absolutely shattered. So, I try to do things as quickly as I possibly can. And then we'll just sort of hang out and chat, and, then I make sure she's in bed, and she's nicely tucked up, and her blood sugar, I've tested her blood sugar, all's good. And yeah, so that's sort of how we're going on at the moment. Yeah.
Now, your business, does that tie into this?
Yes, well, in a way, the organisation I founded 30 years ago, it's called the Complementary Medical Association, or the CMA for short. So we are an organisation that sets standards in the field of complementary medicine. Now, what we mean by complementary medicine is pretty much, we use that term in the same way that you guys in America use the term integrative medicine. So we don't talk about alternative medicine in the UK because it implies that these things that our members are offering, such as massage, such as aromatherapy, such as nutrition, meditation, homeopathic medicine, herbal medicine, and all of the other things, chiropractic, osteopathy, and so on and so forth. It implies that those are an alternative to conventional medicine.
Like they're going to replace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we know, for example, my mum is a good example, being type 1 diabetic. Well, we can't replace insulin. We can't possibly. But what we can do is we can keep her much healthier for longer, needing fewer other medical interventions. So that's why we use the term complementary, because it complements conventional medicine. It's very interesting because we're seeing a bit of a revolution in the medical system in the UK now, whereby doctors are really coming to a massive realization that they don't have all of the answers. So they are actively encouraging their patients to seek help from our members. So, if you've got a bad back, well, no, you're not going to go and, have an operation. You're going to go and see that massage practitioner or that Pilates teacher or that osteopath or that chiropractor first. So they're actually actively referring now to people like myself and others, which is hugely gratifying. So because of that, it's really been important to set standards within the field. So we are the standard setting body. We are global. And so we set standards for practitioners. We also set standards for teaching. So all of the training schools out there register with us, and we look at their courses, make sure those courses are really offering the very, very highest levels of training, the best ethics, and and so on. So we've been doing amazing work. We work very closely with the medical people. The General Medical Council, which is the leading sort of medical body in the UK, refer journalists to us when a journalist contacts the General Medical Council saying, what's the latest in how patients with diabetes can look after themselves, or heart disease can, they'll say, well, actually, why don't you also go and speak to the Complementary Medical Association? So, and we got the law changed during lockdown because, of course, in lockdown in the UK, our lockdown was very draconian, and the government said, right, that's it. Nobody delivering face-to-face services is allowed to be open. So whether that was a hairdresser, a nail bar, those sorts of services. And then, of course, we came under that. So massage practitioners, reflexologists, acupuncturists, and so on. So all of those practitioners were shut down overnight. We found ways of helping those people to pivot their services online. And we also got all of the 4 governments. There are 4 different countries in the UK. I don't know if our viewers wouldn't be aware of that. There's England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and they all have different governments. We actually got all of those governments to come together and agree that our members were allowed to go back to work, because we made the point that if these services are withdrawn from these patients, then these patients are going to get worse. If they've got existing conditions, or if they've got conditions that may arise and they haven't got access to these practitioners, then they could become very seriously ill. And so we got them to write into law that anybody who was working to treat physical ailments or mental emotional ailments was allowed to return to work. So of course, that covered absolutely everybody. So all of our members were allowed to return to work. So that was a huge feather in our caps. And it's something that I will always be very, very proud of, because it was such hard work to actually get those governments to agree, especially as they had their hands full with COVID. They were doing, obviously we've all got opinions about all of that stuff. We're not even going to get into that because it's a very, very, very long, convoluted story. But we were allowed to do that, and it did actually make a huge difference. So we saved people's jobs. These people were going to lose their livelihoods, these practitioners. So we saved their jobs, we kept them in work, and we kept the population afloat because they were able to access. They weren't able to access doctors' surgeries. Doctors weren't allowed to work and see patients. It was all being done remotely, which is not good enough.
Is there anything that we didn't cover you would like to get out there?
This is very, very important to me. So if anybody walks away from this with anything at all, it's that we have so much more control over our future health than any of us realise. We know from the field of epigenetics that everything we do, everything we eat, everything we think, everything we're exposed to has a direct impact upon genetic expression. We know from the work of people like Ornish and so on that you can switch off genes that code for cancers and switch them back on and off at will almost. It's the most extraordinary thing. Now we know that, now we have this science available to us. It's really important that we understand that those choices we're making day by day, hour by hour, second by second, actually impact not just our reality at this particular point in time, in the present moment, but actually further down the line. And so we can really decide to make good choices, and that is going to really help to ensure future health and well-being.
It's got to be tough being like almost worlds apart from Frank.
Yeah.
How can you do that? Do you have any tips for people that might be in long-distance
Yes,
relationships?
indeed, absolutely. Yeah, I think...
and how long have you two been doing that?
11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's big love right there.
It is big love, absolutely. I think the thing is that chemistry has a lot to do with it. And I think also age has a lot to do with it as well. if you don't mind, if we hold that thought now, there was
yeah.
something else I wanted to add in.
Yeah, sure.
It was a thought I didn't really finish, and it was about when we were talking about when I got my biological age tested.
Yeah.
When I made the lifestyle changes that I made when I did the 3-week life change program, I got my biological age retested, and I came out at 27. So I'd gone from 55 down to 27, biologically speaking. Even more amazing is that 13 years later, I've done bioage tests because, you know, it is something.
Recently.
Yeah. And I actually have a bioage test on my website that people can do completely free of charge. They can actually track their biological age rewind process, their progress. But my biological age has stayed at 27, according to these tests. And these are legitimate biometric tests, bioage tests, that are employed by universities around the world. This is not something I made up in the back bedroom going, oh, what can I get people to do? No, these are legitimate bioage tests. And so essentially my biological age has not changed in the last 13 years. Which is quite remarkable, and that is a testament to this lifestyle. So that's how we know. I mean, having the worst, most severe rheumatoid arthritis, where for me every joint was affected, which meant that my prognosis was very poor, and that usually when you have all of your joints affected, your lifespan your projection is probably about 5 years. So, you know, I mean, clearly, I'm in complete remission now. So there's that to think about as well. Yes, I was going to say about
quite
age.
a few people that are in long distance relationships or curious about that.
Yes. Well, here's the thing about long distance relationships. They can be doable. It depends on your age. If you've already gone sort of through, past your child rearing years, I think if you're in a long distance relationship and you're hoping to raise a family, I don't know how that would work. I'm sure it could work. I mean, for example, submarine people, personnel, are away for 6 months at a time. So people do manage to have very, very fulfilling relationships and be apart for long periods of time. For Frank and I, for example, we've managed this because we travel back and forward a lot, but also thanks to FaceTime and so on, we speak for at least 2 hours a night. So the thing is with that is at least, and most people in conventional relationships where they're actually living together don't have that degree of intensity, yes, and that that real listening to each other and that real kind of deep conversation. We always feel very connected. It's very strange if there's something happening for him in his life, I feel it. If there's something happening for me, he feels it immediately. I'll get a text out of the blue. Everything okay? And I'm thinking, wow, how did you even pick up on that? It's really strange. I mean, whether it's psychic, whether it's a spiritual thing, I just don't know. But the strange thing was that as soon as we met, we were not in the market for being in a relationship, either of us. And when our mutual friend, Bethany, actually kind of introduced us, it was this absolute instantaneous knowledge. It was really, really spooky. Really spooky. And we both kind of fought against it. No, this is ridiculous. You're over this side of the world, I'm over no, can't possibly. And we just couldn't ignore it. It was something really, really spectacular. Yeah, it is amazing. I think it helps because we work in the same way, we live the same lifestyle, we have the same beliefs, we're so compatible in every way imaginable. He knows my family well and adores them. I know his family well and I adore them. It's just quite magical actually. And I also have to say it helps that he is the finest human being I've ever met, and the kindest, the most compassionate, one of the funniest people I've ever had the privilege of being around, and he gets me, which is quite something. So, and as we always say, I mean, let's face it, nobody else would have us, So yeah, we're strange creatures. But the thing is also, I've got my mum, who I really adore and I want to be there for. He's got his sons, he's got his work here, I've got my work there. And so it's great because what this does, the relationship, the structure of the relationship allows us to be really intense with our work. And we are intense with our work. He's finishing off his latest book, I've got another book, coming, I've got all sorts of other things going on. And so, when you're not having to rush home to, get the dinner on for the person and, this, that and the other, it does give you that extra freedom to be able to do your thing that is so important to you, that you're so passionate about, and then come together. And also, I will say the other thing, the big perk of being in a long distance relationship is that when you do finally get together, it's honeymoon. You're on honeymoon and you have the best time, and it's so intense. You know, everything about it is so intense, and it's just magical. I have to say, I've never been this happy in my life.
I'm sure vegans may appreciate this because we're so far and few between,
Yes.
and you know, there may be quite a few, there probably is more vegans who are in long distance relationships because of that, you know.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, there are vegan dating apps and things like that in the UK. I'm sure there are here. And there are so few vegan men on these apps. And vegan men are they're in very short supply. So you do have your pick of the bunch, which is, I'm sure, very good for you. But, you know, it is when you meet somebody that compatible, my goodness, it's an eye-opener, and it really does. It's life-changing. When you start eating this way, and when you know, then when you realize, you know, sort of whatever drives you to it, and then you start to realize about, you know, the animal agriculture side of things and the animal welfare side of things, and when you really start to embrace that, your compassion levels massively increase. But also, I think maybe even before that, I think I know a lot of people who've gone plant-based for health. They've then been drawn to find out about the animal welfare side of things. And I think it is because something happens when you stop eating flesh. Your capacity for compassion increases. When that happens, your capacity for love massively increases. You know, I thought I've had times where I've thought I've been in love, and I'm sure I genuinely have, but it's not like this. It's a completely different ball game where you are spiritually connected. If that doesn't sound too woo.
Exactly. I know. How else are you going to describe it? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mike the vegan. Have you ever heard of him? He's a YouTuber.
Yes.
He has a video. I don't remember what it was called or what it was even about, but at some point in the video, you know, he talks about this compassion thing and how vegans tend to have bigger hearts, you know. And then he even kind of jokes, maybe it's because we have healthier hearts, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something there, and maybe there's something there with the energy too. That's just, you know, something that we don't even understand yet.
Yeah.
That connects people on another level.
Yes.
That we're unaware of.
I think maybe there is something to the fact that we do know, and forgive me, anybody who's you know, watching this and is really very sensitive, but I will say it, and we do know that when animals are slaughtered, of course, they are in absolute terror, and of course they have all of those cytokines and hormonal messengers and neurotransmitters, you know, going through their entire systems. That in itself, if you think you are consuming absolute fear and panic and horror, that has to have an impact on the human body. It has to. I'm sure it's never been studied. I'm not aware of any.
This has come up a lot in interviews.
Has it?
Absolutely, yes. I've heard it. It seems like every time I go and do a run, you know, where I'm going out and I'm getting as many as I can.
Yes.
And then I go out and do it again. Each one of those is a run, and there's at least one or two people that mention something like that. And then at one point, somebody mentioned that somebody has actually studied that. So I would love to get a little compilation of everybody saying that, and then find this study and the researcher and maybe make something out of it, because I think there is something. Even arachidonic acid, there's even science to support that the arachidonic acid might cause depression, you know.
It promotes inflammation, and we know there's a direct correlation, don't we, between chronic inflammation and depression. It's very interesting because it used to be, it's been known in diabetics, both type 1 and 2, and other types of diabetes as well, that there is a much higher prevalence of depression also in people with rheumatoid arthritis. And of course, the medics always used to just say, well, yeah, of course you're depressed, you've got a miserable disease, you know, miserable illness, is that you're bound to feel a bit fed up, to say the least. It's not that at all. It is, you know, yes, of course, it's ghastly, it's awful, it's painful, it's bloody difficult. You know, diabetes, bloody difficult to live like that. Constantly have to monitor your blood sugar and inject, and awful. But we know, of course, there is this underlying preponderance of and predisposition towards chronic inflammation, and that is driving, a massive driver of depression. It's not rocket science, this stuff, is it? You know, you don't have to look too far to figure out what the mechanisms actually are.
So if somebody wants to find out more about you, how can they find you?
Right, okay, well, it's very easy. My website for my blog, for my books, and all the giveaways. I have a lot of giveaways on my website because I believe in making really important things freely available to people, things that are life-changing. So on my website, I've got a Yoga Nidra meditation for deep restorative sleep. Sleep, as we know, is absolutely crucial. So people can go and just download that for free.
I need that.
Yeah, we all need it. We all need it. I've got a beautiful meditation. I was lucky enough to, while he was still with us, my darling Dr. Herbert Benson at the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard Medical School was my mentor. And I was privileged enough to learn his relaxation response meditation. I learned directly from him. So I've made an instructional recording so that people don't have to sit and read the instructions and go, okay, right, now I've got to sit. What do I do next? Close my eyes. Right, okay. Okay, now what do I do? Oh, right, okay, so I relax my body. Okay, right. Oh, now, you know, and that's just annoying, isn't it? That's really annoying. So I've made a nice, lovely sort of talk through instructional recording. People can just listen to, do it, and then once they've done it, they know it, and it's really, really simple. It's absolute simplicity.
Is it your voice?
It's my voice,
nice.
Yes.
I bet it is nice.
Yeah, and thank you. I believe I've got my recipe book. So it's obviously whole food, plant-based, SOS-free recipe book with some fabulous recipes. I have to say, they're very tasty, really lovely, really delicious. As I was saying earlier about stealth luring people to the green side, these are great recipes if you are wanting to cater for non-vegans. And you just want to impress upon them that, you know, that this way of eating can be absolutely delicious. These are really super tasty meals. So that's there for free. Oh, and of course, the biological age test thing. Yeah. Now, that's completely anonymized, by the way. What you do is you go to the website and you put your details in and just so your email address so that you can get the reports back. We don't see it. We don't see your results. Completely anonymous. There are 5 different exercises that you do and you track you just log your result. So a skin pinch test, a balance test, a vision test, a flexibility test, and a reaction speed time test. So you log all of those results in, and then in a month's time, you'll get an email, hey, it's time to do your tests again. So you go back, you do the tests, you log your results, and you'll start to get feedback from the site saying, okay, so your biological age has regressed, so you're biologically younger as far as your reaction speed time is concerned. But your skin pinch test is you're biologically older. So were you maybe a bit dehydrated when you did the test? Make sure your conditions are the same each time. So it's a really helpful system. It's great. So it's anonymized, but we are actually correlating the data to actually just see. So we don't know who's submitted the data, but we are actually getting the data. So it's a wonderful research project that will actually show how this lifestyle is impacting people's biological age regression. So again, that's on the site. So that website is jayneygoddard.com. So Jayney Goddard, GODDARD.com or .org. Take your pick, doesn't matter. And then if people are interested in finding out more about the work of the Complementary Medical Association, that's so THE hyphen, so it's a dash, not an underscore, THE hyphen CMA.org.uk.
Great.
Or hit me up on social. And it's Jayney Goddard. It's very easy.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure you're ready to get back to Frank.
I jolly well am, absolutely. I need to make sure he's not getting into mischief anywhere. But I think dinner is looming, and I have to say the food here has been great. So I'm going to check out and see what's for dinner.
Excellent. All right. Well,
Thank you so much, Jeff.